Hello, Sapna. Awesome. How are you? That's great to hear. Thank you for having me on your podcast. Awesome. Thank you. And it's I must say it's fantastic that despite a speech impairment, we are able to talk and record a podcast. I saw some of your achievements in your studies, your book, your podcast, and it's really impressive. So yeah, it's awesome to see all that you do. And yeah, I'm just grateful to be here. I'd love to know where are you tuning in from today? Where in the world are you? Cool. So thank you. That's a really good question. I started in business with a dream to help the environment. Before I was a marketing coach, at the very beginning, I was a content writer. I used to write blogs and websites and articles and emails and press releases for companies. But that was to build to pay my bills while I built another company, which was called Manuka Essentials. And I discovered that there's this plant in New Zealand where I live called Manuka, and it is the first plant to recover some land when it turns back to native forest. So it provides canopy cover that allows other native plants to come through, prevents erosion on hillsides, it brings invertebrates that attracts birds that bring other seeds, it cleans the waterways. And I found that if we created demand for this native plant, farmers and landowners could plant it on their land profitably, then we could see our whole country go back to native forest. So I started this business. I ran it for about 5 years, but it wasn't quite the right fit for me. And so around the COVID lockdowns, I realized that one, it was really, I care so much about the environment, but it was hard to make a proper impact despite how much I cared. And if I cared so much, it must be even harder for other businesses that want to care to make an impact. So my partner and I started a charity called the Reforestation Fund at that point. But this was before I was a marketing agency or a marketing coach. So we started this charity with the idea that we would make it easier for brands to give back to the environment, which evolved into what we do now, which is we showcase the people who helping the environment, people that are doing good things, planting trees or looking after endangered species, and we create videos to tell their stories. So the idea is that we found in running our charity, the Reforestation Fund, that people weren't even really all that aware of the problems and the solutions. And you can't expect someone to give their time and money to solutions if they don't know the problems in the first place. So we decided that we would start by focusing on creating videos. Throughout that time, content and online marketing has been what's paid my bills and what's allowed me to do all of this. So I used to have a marketing agency, and now I've become a coach. So that's a really high level zooming of 6 years of work. But if I look at where we are today, we have our charity, the Reforestation Fund, which we're about to change the name of, to focus on telling stories of people helping the environment through YouTube videos and shorts and stuff that young people can connect with. And I also coach people through Paste and Publish, which is this business. So it help people to get customers online, which is a skill I have and a passion I have, but it also makes money so that I can do the environmental stuff for free. As I was growing up as a kid, he was running a business for someone else that was importing floor coverings, so carpets and vinyl, carpet tiles, that type of thing. And when I was just before I became a teenager, probably I was about maybe no, I'd say about 9 or 10 years old. He started his own business, and that was a floor coverings business. So he imported carpets and vinyls, carpet tiles. I went to work for him for a bit, and we supplied them to retail shops all around New Zealand. They supplied large projects like housing developments, hospitals, schools, rest homes, and dabbled in a few other things. But that was the main area, was floor coverings, bringing it in, so importing containers of it, and then selling rolls and enough for houses and facilities. So really interesting that growing up, I was always in a product-based business. I always thought of business as buy a product from a factory or from an importer or distributor or supplier and sell it at a markup. And that was mostly my view of business. But in the last 5 years, I've transitioned to services. So instead of selling something physical, providing a solution like building you a website, for example. And it took a few years before I realized that there was real value in actually providing services. So the first, and I think that's why I started Manuka Essentials in many ways, was because I saw that Dad succeeded by selling products, so I should make and sell my own products. That's part of what I realized, that selling products isn't my place in the world. It's solving problems for people and helping people, which is why part of why I transitioned to services. Yeah, that's a good question. Growing up, I used to visit my mum and dad separated when I was 7, and I used to visit dad every second weekend. And whenever I went over there, we would talk about business, and he would share stories of all the things that he's doing in business, and the types of deals he was doing, the problems he was facing at work, the challenges with staff or with suppliers or with interest rates or legalities and customs. Like, he really shared with me at a young age how business worked. And I found that throughout school, I was building my own little businesses, largely because I really idolized him as a kid. And so I would, my first ever little business, I think it was about 8 years old at primary school. I took some icing sugar and raro, like cordial mixture, from mum's cupboard, and I sold sherbet, which is like a sweet thing at school. And, I traded and sold different things and had all different jobs from a very young age. And, all because I saw what Dad was doing in business. And then when it got time to go to university, I decided to study marketing at Otago University, which is in the south of New Zealand, because he studied marketing at Otago there. And then when I finished university, I went and worked for him for a few years. So I really saw behind the scenes of a lot of how business works at the boardroom and also at all different levels. A really invaluable learning that you can't learn in a degree, in a lot of things that just don't get taught. You've just got to see them by your mistakes or by someone else's mistakes. Yeah, mostly. In my heart, I've always cared about the environment. That's always been one of my top priorities, if not my top priority. And so I've been brought up in a world of business, but my heart's always been focused on the environment, been giving to environmental charities and volunteering where I can. And I used to be a cub and a scout growing up. So I was in the forest and climbing mountains and doing bushcraft all the time, and constantly reading books and learning and going to exhibitions. And it's really, environment's always been my priority. And, I wanted to be a marine biologist as a kid, as a teenager. And I followed the business route because, I saw that's where the world is. And that's what I know. As I came into my own in business, as I built my own company and learnt the way I want to operate, I gravitated more and more and more towards helping the environment and bringing together those two sides of it. So I guess the foundation in business has largely come from Dad. And planting the seed to know how to do business has come from Dad, but my heart is from the environment. And I think if we take it back a step, if I look at the environmental landscape here in New Zealand, and I'm sure it's similar in the UK and in other parts of the world, people that are helping the environment, that are doing conservation, whether they're environmental scientists, ecologists, people on the ground doing the labor work, whether it's people managing and organizing, we're all pulling from the same pot of money. It might be government funding, it might be philanthropy. We're all taking from the same, eating from the same table. And I don't want to take food from someone else that's helping the environment that could have a career that I'd take if I took their money by taking a job that's funded by the same pot of money. To me, bringing the environment and business together is a way to bring new resources to help the environment and new skills to help the environment. Because if we're all just expert scientists and practitioners on the ground, that's great. But it's the diversity of our skill sets and the diversity of our beliefs and attitudes that brings true environmental solutions to life. Anything's possible if you want to in this world, right? Some industries are harder to be good on the environment than others, just by the nature of, if you are pulling oil and gas out of the ground, there's going to be damage, right? But you can still be more conscious and kind to the environment. There are many ways but to those who don't agree, there's a few things I'd say and I would ask. If you look forward 50 or 100 years, what future do you want to give to your children and grandchildren? What legacy do you want to be known for? Do you want to be known as the people that led us to collapse, that put major hardship and biodiversity loss, maybe financial gain today, maybe infrastructure today, but future poverty because of not thinking long term? Do you want to give that to your children and grandchildren for a bit more profit today? Or do you want to create a future that we can thrive in and we can flourish in? The data's there, the science is there, the information's there. The world is changing very fast. Different people think it might be too late or not, but if we don't make change, then what type of ancestors are we to the future? That's one side of it. I think on the other side of the coin, and this is a bit more philosophical, and I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with what I say. As humans, we make an assumption that we're more important than all the other species on this planet. Whoever said that we're more important? What makes us more important than an elephant? What makes an elephant more important than a dog? What makes a dog more important than a spider? Sure, you can say we're smarter, we've got all these resources and tools. You can look to biblical scripts to say that we are the chosen ones. There's a lot of different justifications. But if you take a step back, what makes us think that we can take other species' habitat? What makes us think that we can change the world in ways that devastate and make other species extinct? Is that really our right to choose? Are we playing God, or do we have a responsibility? Because with great power comes great responsibility. The power to take from this earth. Surely we have the obligation to do it responsibly. Now, no matter what we do, we're not going to be perfect. By talking on this call, we're using electricity that's probably, some of it might be generated by unsustainable industries. Every time you drive your car, you eat some food, you buy a new technological device, you're going to do some kind of impact on the planet. It's not about being absolutely perfect and living in a cave. It's just about trying to respect what we've got and what we could have in the future. That's my opinion anyway, and it might be an unpopular opinion, but I think it's just really important to consider. In terms of their impact on the environment, or just in terms of how they live their lives, or in what context do you mean? I think so, but I don't think we're necessarily to blame either, because we are so busy these days. I think we're exposed to 20 or 30,000 advertising messages every day. We've got so many notifications coming up on our phones. We've got so many people wanting to talk to us through Facebook Messenger and WhatsApp and all these other social tools. People can reach us everywhere. I've got like 10, 15 unread social messages just now, despite, let alone the emails. With so many distractions, it's really easy not to see what's happening in the environment. And also, if you're living in a big city, you don't see what's happening in the vast majority of our landmass. So I don't think most people are super aware, but I think most people do have a feeling somewhere inside that something isn't right with our environment, that our planet is not healthy, that it's asking for our help. And that's where our charity comes into play. That's where the Reforestation Fund, which is changing names soon, is what we're trying to do to bridge this gap. So if you're really busy in your life and you've got so much going on, and maybe you're not fully aware of the problems and the solutions, and there are people who spend their lives working for the environment and they're so well aware, these people are speaking different languages and it's really hard to connect. So where a charity comes in is creating videos and stories that are easily digestible and easily accessible to the masses. We as a people can be more aware. And then those of us that want to give our time or our resources or our businesses can then take action to do that with a local charity or further afield. In my view, it's not hard and fast and a solid, here's the boundaries of conscious consumer. But I think it's just being aware of the impacts of your actions. So if you buy locally grown apple, you know that it's only driven maybe 100 or 200 kilometers to get to you. If you buy an apple from the other side of the world, that it's come on planes and that has, or on ships, and that has an impact. Compared to a consumer that buys and consumes and does things without any thought about the impact outside of what it means for them. It's simply just having in mind a view to what the external impacts are of your actions. And that's a spectrum, right? There's people that are maybe not super conscious and not super aware, but they know that buying a V8 supercar and revving it every single day isn't great, but that driving a Toyota Prius is less impactful, right? On the other hand, there are people that are vegan, that are only raw, that will bicycle everywhere, etc. So I don't think in terms of being a conscious consumer, there's a solid definition. But to me, it's like if you are aware of the impacts of your actions, that's a seed that's planted that grows within you if you want to water it. And yeah, that's, I guess, how I'd say it. What do you think? How do you see a conscious consumer? Right. Awesome. That's awesome. And as long as you feel that you're trying, that's the main thing. It's not about being perfect. Nobody is perfect. So good on you for trying. That's a start. If I said that I was a perfect consumer, I'd be lying. So it's all a journey, right? In my current business, the supply chain is services. Compared to a product-based business where you have ingredients or suppliers or components coming from all different areas, it's a lot easier to be conscious with a service business. So in my business, Paste and Publish, when we were operating as a marketing agency, we would set aside 5% of the money that comes in, and then we used to pay our staff to do free work for environmental projects. We built websites, we ran fundraising campaigns, built this charity, that type of thing. Now that's obviously a lot of money, as 5% is a lot of someone's income. That's one thing we do. Now that I'm a marketing coach, the business model is a bit different. So I still do free work and free training for environmental groups. I recently built a website for a local volunteer group that looks after a forest up the road from us. I do a bit of coaching of volunteers that are helping the environment. So I'll coach them on how to do their marketing and train them so that they can then have the skills, do the odd workshop, that type of thing. So in my business as a service, a lot of what I do is to help the environment is simply looking after, providing my skills where I can, because I can give money, sure, but the cost of getting a good marketer to help your environmental project is out of reach. It's too expensive for most charities. So I bring my skills for free. That's one thing. But I think outside of that is looking at how you treat the people that you have relationships with. If someone brings us a customer, if they provide a referral and that person becomes a customer, I'll then donate a portion of the money that that customer spends to environmental charities on their behalf and on ours, and on the customer's behalf, so that money goes to charity. And then also, yeah, just looking after my contractors, looking after my staff, looking after my customers. And through having those good relationships, you have a foundation that you can do good off. But if you have shaky relationships, it's hard to actually do any good long term. So I guess that's sort of how we help our environment compared to just a profit-driven business. So this is something that's not going to be as relevant in the future, but our original plan for the reforestation fund was that we would allow brands to basically use our TRF logo, the Reforestation Fund logo, on their products and give a dollar amount per product sold. And then that we would give that on to environmental groups and we'd make sure that the brands are ethical brands. So we're changing the way we operate this charity and won't be doing that anymore. Instead, we'll be focusing on creating video documentaries to share the stories. And then instead of us managing the giving, when people want to give money, we will put them in touch with other charities that do that so that we can then support them and help them to grow. But to answer your question, how we ensure they align with our values, we have a series of criteria that we set out. I can find the document and read it out to you if you like. It's it's just a series of things. Do you want me to do that, or what do you think? So, like I said, this won't be relevant in the near future because the reason why we're changing it is that we found that the scale at which we need to operate to make this properly successful is more resources than we have available in terms of our time to give right now. To do the Reforestation Fund properly, we would need multiple staff members and people on the road building relationships with major brands. And I have multiple businesses plus this, and I don't have the time to give it. My partner works full time, plus she's on the board of multiple environmental charities. And so we found that doing this was going to take more time than we had available to give. So we decided that that's part of the reason why we decided to do environmental storytelling, was that with the time we've got, we can get more results for the environment. We can get more people involved, and that the results compound more without having that larger staffing need. But to answer your question, the criteria that we set out were they have to be based in New Zealand, because this is a New Zealand charity, or if it's an international company, they need to have a physical presence here. Their packaging needs to be recyclable or compostable in New Zealand so that it's not going to landfill. They need to be focused on sustainability, and they need to be aware of the impacts of their supply chain. Where it's relevant, they need to aim to use natural ingredients, although we understand this isn't always realistic. If it's an animal food product, it should be free farmed, not cage farmed like a lot of animal stuff is. If it's a personal care product, it shouldn't be tested on animals, and they shouldn't be using child labor or inhumane working conditions. And if there's child labor that's unavoidable, there needs to be a clear and transparent plan in place for ending that, because we understand the complexities involved in that space. And then the following things are no-go. We will not take brands that have these criteria. So if they're greenwashing, if they pretend to be good for the environment, but they don't actually follow through with their actions, or if they've done this in the past, there's no chance that we're working together. If the key team members, the leadership, don't believe in climate change, if there's issues with fraud or lack of transparency, if the finished products or components are an active contributor to deforestation or material environmental damage, for example, if someone was selling whale meat, we wouldn't obviously want to partner with them, or if it's from unethical or unsustainable industries. And it's ideal to be made in New Zealand, to be carbon neutral and negative, to use native plants, to already be promoting conservation, to have customers that are ethical consumers, organic or vegan. But these things aren't essential. These are just nice to haves. That's kind of the criteria of who we've been looking to work with. But like I said, that's going to change in the near future. It's a good question. I think it's definitely concerning because America is such a big powerhouse. They set an example for the world. They are large contributors to climate change, especially if you look on a per capita, per person per year basis. That is a major concern. And if you look at the recent COP28, there was a bit of watering down and diluting of the environmental commitments to get the likes of America, Russia, and China involved. And if you don't have the world's most powerful countries involved, then it's a lot less effective. So it is a concern, and I wish that I could wave a magic wand and solve it. But unfortunately, we are just individuals, and so we can only do what we can do. I'm not born into power or vast resources. I've got enough to get by, enough to make a change. And so we choose to do what we can within our control. I know that if I show up and I put positive action out there every day, that can make a difference. But it's really easy to be consumed and overwhelmed by these negative problems. I spent many years of my life worried about, what if America does this? What if they keep definning shark? What if we don't stop polluting? What if we keep chopping down our forests? And I've seen things from Greenpeace and Sea Shepherd and these charities that are very combative, that pick fights with those doing bad, which is very important as well. But ultimately, for me at least, it makes me depressed. And when I'm depressed, I don't take positive action. And so I become a problem, not a solution. So yeah, I am concerned about it. Yes, it is a problem, but I think letting their voice infect your own mind is only limiting your own power and potential and stopping you from taking actions that can do positive change. It's terrible. It's really bad. We had so much positive progress under the last government, and there is so much worry here in this country. I think apart from one or two people who don't believe in climate change that I've spoken to, every single other person I've talked to in New Zealand says this is terrible. For those of you who aren't aware, they're opening up offshore oil prospecting, they're approving deep sea mining, deep sea fishing, taking viewers off commercial fishing boats to prevent overfishing and overcatch. They're potentially opening up mining on conservation land and resource exploitation. They are putting laws in place that allow individual ministers of parliament to bypass our resource management acts to forward transport and to forward infrastructure projects without any consideration of environmental protection. And they're doing a whole lot. That's just a handful of things. They're doing so much to harm the environment It's short-term thinking. They've had so many warnings, and it really upsets me. They can be so stupid to think that this is a good idea. Look, I understand that there is a need for financial stability. Our last government spent way too much money and built up a lot of debt, and this government has come in with a large hole of debt that they need to service in a financial environment where there's high interest rates and people are leaving for Australia and other countries because there's better job opportunities overseas. The cost of living is high, and there's a lot of financial problems in New Zealand right now. And so they are addressing those problems. And as a right-wing and political party, that is typically, focusing on business and financial and economic prosperity is where they focus. And you need that balance in government. Otherwise, we'll bankrupt ourselves. However, it's so short-sighted that it is destroying and damaging our biodiversity and removing so much capabilities and skills and potential that's been built in the last 6 years. So I don't support National and I don't support Labour either. I'm a lot more environmentally focused than both. Really sad to see. That's probably the politest way I can put it, is they're not doing good for the environment. And I understand that they want to create a future where everyone has opportunities, but to ignore the importance of the environment, of the climate, of our biodiversity in creating opportunities for our future is to only be looking at half the picture and thinking you know better. I follow my partner, Anna Vinch, around quite a lot. She's involved on the ground with environmental projects, and I tend to help her out a lot. So I'd love to share stuff that we've done together that's mostly been led by her, if that's okay. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Awesome, fantastic. In the Bay of Plenty, which is the region in New Zealand where we live, there's a type of penguin. It's the smallest penguin in the world. It's called the little blue penguin, or the korora in Māori. And she is heavily involved in the penguin program. So they go into penguin burrows, they microchip them, they count their populations and growth. And through doing that, we've seen an increase in penguin populations, and she's very involved in that charity and gets a lot of fundraising for them. So it's being able to build a capability there where they're regularly followed and checked. We've come in after people have been doing this for 20 years, but taking it forward, we're seeing some really good results in terms of population health and breeding. And I can't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head, but she was saying in the last season, there were a few that got washed out to sea and that disappeared because of weather events. Otherwise, pretty much all of them survived, which is really good. On that same coastline, we're involved in the shorebird program, which my partner set up, and I've helped volunteering with a little bit. So shorebirds like the New Zealand dotterel and the variable oyster catcher, they are at risk in this country because of cats and dogs and hedgehogs and other introduced mammals. And so a shorebird is a bird that lives on the shore, that breeds on the shore. The dotterels, for example, will feed through the seaweed and the food that's washed up onto the beach. And of course, when they lay their eggs on the sand, it's quite vulnerable. So we've been looking after that, built up a volunteer base, and those volunteers throughout the program, we've had some of the best survival rates of dotterels throughout the whole North Island of New Zealand, despite this being one of the most popular beaches in the country. So on the same patch of beach, there's a surf club, there's a volleyball club, there are surf lessons, there's hundreds if not thousands of people visit this beach every day. And so you would expect that these birds would be trampled on and they'd be killed pretty fast. Anywhere else in the country that would typically happen, but the breeding success of these birds is more successful than areas where there's no humans, which just goes to show what's possible with volunteers. If we then look to the Otani Wainuku and Kaharoa forests, which are up the road from where we live, on the outskirts of the city we live in, both of these forests have a very, very endangered species of bird called the kokako, or the blue-wattled crow. This bird is very rare it's much, much rarer than the kiwi. They are very seldom seen. And in both of these forests, which are about 10 kilometers apart, the breeding program over the last 25 years has been so successful that they're overpopulated and they're starting to fly to areas where there's no protection for them. And so a group has been set up to plant forests and create forest corridors to connect them so that they can share their genetics and they can grow their population even more. These are just a few examples. I'm happy to share more if you like, but I want to say that I play a small role in these projects. I might volunteer on the weekend, I might build them a website, I might run a fundraising campaign for them, and I might do a whole lot of work, but we're just two people. This isn't all on us. There are so many good people that give their time, their money, their effort, their heart and their soul, and have done for decades that I can't take the credit from. So, you know, these people that are tireless volunteers, they're really the heroes, but, you know, we have been involved and helped them. Thank you. I think part of running a business is that I have the time available to spend on these initiatives, that I can go and spend my time during the week doing these things. So it's nice to have that flexibility. I think in terms of combining business and environment, it's quite rewarding to be able to bring different skill sets to the table. Being able to say, hey, when you communicate, what are you communicating? I was talking to an environmental group the other day and they wanted to do communications. And the plan was, let's post some stuff on social media, let's host some workshops, let's do some various things and just see what happens. And I was able to say, hey, I've done this for businesses, and obviously if you're doing this for a business, it has to make money, or it has to get to some kind of outcome. Otherwise the business doesn't see the value in spending money on it. And so for me to be able to come in and say, hey, what's the outcome of this? Where are you trying to go with this? What are you trying to achieve? If it's building a website and someone who has no experience building websites is building the website for an environmental group, to expect them to do it really well on the first go is unrealistic and it's not a fair ask. And so for me to be able to come in and say, hey, I've done this dozens of times, I know all the pitfalls and where to go right and wrong, I've got a process and checklists, let's just do it. That's really rewarding. That's in terms of connecting business and the environment. But I think what's the most rewarding is seeing just how much people in conservation give to the environment. You know, I could rattle off some names. You probably wouldn't know them because they're just locally here, but there are so many people that give their lives to the environment. And it is a sacrifice. You know, if you want to work with kiwi, for example, or you want to work with penguin, spend, you know, 2 or 3 days a week going into the forest, managing traps to remove the predators. This doesn't pay well. It is a financial sacrifice. You know, smart people that are skilled and committed, they give their time, they give their future, they give their potential so that they can do what matters to them and that matters to the environment. That I really have to take my hat off to. My partner Anna, she works at the National Kiwi Hatchery. So they take eggs from kiwi in the wild where there's about a 5% success rate, and they breed them up and then release them once they're more able to defend themselves, and they have a 65% success rate, which is awesome. But sometimes she'll come home and there'll be a kiwi that's sick. She will have a video camera on it, and we'll be sitting at the couch watching something, and she'll all of a sudden be checking the kiwi and seeing what it's doing and getting up in the early and going to work early because she wants to make sure that kiwi's healthy and it lives. That's just one example, but there are so many people that live and breathe conservation, that sacrifice so much in their lives to help the biodiversity and endangered species. And to me, these are the heroes of our generation. It's not the person that makes the most money, it's the people that care the most for our planet. And that's why I do what I do, is to empower those people to do more, because they don't get enough credit, they don't get enough resourcing to make a proper impact, and they don't get enough airtime, and they deserve more. So that's why we're here, really, in a nutshell. Well, firstly, thank you for having me. It's been really a pleasure to be here and to talk with you. I mean, I'd like to say, if you thinking about your environmental impact and you're thinking about what can you do, don't be hard on yourself, and don't try not to kick it down the road, right? If you can take a small action today, that's planting a seed for your future, and that small action compounds. It might be that you recycle some packaging instead of putting it into landfill. It might be that you plant a tree or volunteer with your local community. It might be that you just look at how to reduce your carbon. But when you do this once, you'll start thinking about it. And if this is something that draws you to it, it's better to do something really small and insignificant today than it is to try and wait years to do something big, and that might never happen. But just keep in mind that there are people in almost every community that are doing good, that are looking for more help. And if you want to help, you can do it. I got into volunteering for the environment because, I mean, I care, right? But part of it was because I wanted to go and visit parts of the forest that you wouldn't see otherwise. And it was the community that kept me. Having an impact was good, but it was being around like-minded people that care. So yeah, people caring is, it's not just about doing your bit for the environment. It's also about meeting people that share your values. And yeah, lastly, I think it's pretty fantastic that you're in London, I'm in New Zealand, we're talking on this call. You're able to host these calls with effort, and the attention that you put into it is awesome. You've had so many great questions throughout this call, and I just want to share my gratitude for the opportunity to be here. So thank you, Sapna. Thank you again, and I really appreciate being here. So cheers. Cool. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. Have a nice day. See ya. Bye.